1, the lot development in Hutchison St Bombo, the double-storey dwelling.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Brown.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Watson. If there's no one, Councillor Riley.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this is a very difficult situation that we all have to face in council, and I don't like to think in terms of winners and losers. I think that if we were to give a little bit more time to this, so that perhaps the two parties involved might be able to work out some kind of a resolution.
Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've also got concerns about the just difficulty between the two neighbours and the way that the development has proceeded and the design's been worked out. But I've got a question that I was concerned about that I want to ask the Director, is that the Speaker at Public Access today said that the neighbours' submissions weren't recognised in the business paper or discussed. What happened there in relation to those submissions? Did they come in within the required time frame?
I'll ask you, the Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, all the submissions have been recognised. If you look at page 193, it talks about the first notification period. There was 2 submissions received, and then the second notification, 1 submission was received. There was 2 notification processes in accordance with our normal process. We notified the neighbours, adjoining neighbours, and they were given all of this information at that time and able to make submissions. Subsequently, once changes were made to the plans, we re-notified neighbours and received 1 submission subsequently from that notification period. So we have followed the process in that case.
Okay, look, thank you very much. I think I'd missed that first round there with the 2 submissions received and just saw the 1 submission received, so thus I took that in when the Speaker told us that information. The other concern I've got about this is that the original property that was there was 90 square metres, I understand, and now it's 130.25 in the FSR calculation. But then with all of its non-FSR features, it comes up to something like 230 square metres. And so I'm quite concerned that that is a really abrupt change to the person who's living behind. And it seems like there's not much space left on the site aside from the house. So I'm hoping that there is a possibility that the 2 neighbours are able to discuss it with each other. And I also feel that given that there's been the consideration of the joint land taken into account, that seems to be a concession in some way, that still the development is over the FSR. And I would really far prefer to see, after that concession taken into account, a design that does fit within our planning controls, particularly the floor space ratio.
Councillor Sloan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, again, through the CEO, I've got a question for the Director, please. I seem to recall that we've had this situation before in recent times with dual occupancies and apportioning the shared driveway or the common property. Is that correct? And did we followed a similar procedure at that time or protocol?
I'll ask the Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just to be very clear, when you have a look on page 174, we're actually asking for Council to approve a development standard departure of 15.6% for the FSR. What the argument is in relation to the shared driveway is saying if you did take the shared driveway into account, then the departure would only be 1.3% variation, not 15.6%. So the argument that the applicant has spoken to shows that it isn't, if you counted the driveway, it wouldn't be as much over the FSR. But in order to approve the development, we're actually saying that we are not taking the driveway into account. We're just looking at the lot and the dwelling on the lot, and it's a 15.6% variation. So it's actually a moot point, the driveway, because we're not considering it. It just comes into the argument of how much further over the FSR you're actually going.
Can I just ask a supplementary question there, because I'm through the Mayor, sorry. I'm not quite sure of the delegations that we haven't given out yet. I'm just wondering, in terms of precedent, though, if it is a moot point, because I'm quite sure that we've had in the last couple of years. Is that because they were a different situation where they were subdivided differently, or is that because this is still in a strata arrangement?
Through you, Mr Mayor, in those circumstances, the subdivision and the lot calculations were all done at the same time. So there's different to this one where the strata subdivisions already occur and you have a resulting allotment that now needs a dwelling put on it. Those ones, we were looking at the dwelling and the subdivision at the same time, and that's when we looked at the entire site. So that's where the difference is compared to this site. Regardless, it is over FSR, and we are seeking council's endorsement of that, and we can't do that without your approval, given that we don't have concurrence from the minister. So that's why it's come before council in this case.
And sorry, Mr Mayor, one last question. Look, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with the gym losing the wall on the fourth side, the narrow side, and that all of a sudden qualifies or does not have to count towards the FSR. I just wanted to reconfirm that a long garage-like room that is open still on one end does not count in FSRs. I'd just like to make the statement there, it just doesn't seem right when something could be enclosed quite easily, post-approvals, that it's not counted in the FSR.
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we do have very stringent requirements in relation to what's counted and not counted. Stairwells, storage areas, etc. are not counted in the FSR. So this does qualify, and we have checked that a number of times to make sure that it is compliant with our policy provision.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Having read through this a number of times and having discussed this with my fellow council officers and numerous talks back and forth to our director, we can see that this does comply with the LEP. We also have heard tonight that the height of the new dwelling there's little significant difference to the previous dwelling, and the view sharing issue to me is the main issue, and with the recommendation of approval, I think it would be very difficult for this council to reject the recommendation and come up with reasons to support that rejection, and that's why I supported the recommendation provided by our officers tonight.
Thank you. You have the recommendation. Those in favour, please raise their hands. Those against, I declare the motion carried. Thank you.